will always remember how the Texas sun tasted like metal. That noon, Fort Hood was blazing white. The U.S. flags trembled in the heat, sunlight bursting across steel helmets, glinting like blades. The military band tightened its rhythm, drums striking sharp. Soldiers stood in blocks, edges straight as rulers. I was in the third row, eyes fixed forward, boots reflecting the blue sky. The announcement rang out. "Unit, ready, prepare for review." The commanding general appeared with his entourage of senior officers. Among that sea of green uniforms, I instantly recognized Major Daniel Brooks, 32 years old, my younger brother. Silver oak leaves gleamed on his shoulders. He always walked like the cameras were waiting just for him. And me, Sergeant Helena Brooks, 34, stood in the third row, unseen, stripped bare, known only as Daniel's sister. "Brooks, quit staring like that," Corporal McKay muttered beside me. I shot back. "I'm looking straight ahead." But we both knew the name always scraped like sandpaper. We marched in formation. The sun hammered down on my neck, sweat running along my spine. From the family section, I spotted my father, rigid as a flagpole. He still carried himself like the colonel he once was, chin lifted high. My mother sat quietly beside him, her hands knotted together. The parade moved smoothly until the inspection. Daniel loved this part, pausing, praising one soldier, nodding at another, lingering for the cameras. When he reached my row, he stopped. "Well, Sergeant Brooks," he said, voice smooth. "Your boots are shining, I see you tried." A snicker escaped from somewhere in the ranks. I kept my eyes level, shoulders square. Daniel's smile curved thinner. "But it's a shame," he continued loudly enough for several rows to hear. "A grunt is still a grunt. She could have gone to the academy, she could have been an officer. Instead, she chose to clean rifles, stack crates, count bullets. That's also a choice. Every household needs someone to carry the water." A ripple of whispers spread. I even heard someone mimic the word grunt. Daniel wasn't finished. He leaned closer. "Does a sergeant's pay buy enough dog food? Or do you still need me to help like when we were kids?" My heart pounded like a hammer, but I didn't answer. My mind went to night marches, to medical shifts, to folded flags handed to widows. And he was asking me about dog food. The general cleared his throat. "That's enough, Major." Daniel nodded, but before stepping away, he murmured, "You know it's true." He pivoted sharply. I stood rigid, jaw locked. Afterward, my father came over. His eyes swept from my cap to my boots. "You look presentable. At least your brother has an eye for detail. A grunt should be a good grunt. Don't dream too big." I only nodded. "I'm doing my duty." He grunted and walked off. My mother looked at me but said nothing, her hand still clasped in his. McKay muttered under his breath, "If I punched that smile off the major's face, I'd land in prison, right?" I said, "Depends on which major you punch." We gave a bitter laugh. On the board flashed the afternoon schedule, marksmanship test. I knew I'd need that. McKellar's range sat behind a strip of trees. The air reeked of gunpowder, acrid in the throat. I drew my target, took position. Daniel was there too, hands in pockets, smirking. "You first. Show me how it's done." I didn't answer. I racked the bolt, loaded the mag, set my stance. 5 shots cracked sharp. The supervisor reeled in the target, 5 holes clustered in the bullseye. A whistle rose. Daniel forced a smile. "Not bad, I forgot you've been doing this for years." I turned my head steady. "You didn't forget, you just pretended." His smile twitched, stiffening. He glanced at his watch, muttered something about a meeting, then strode off toward the lot. A black window SUV idled there. A man in a white shirt stepped out and shook his hand. I checked my watch, 14:17. No such meeting was on the schedule. My phone buzzed. A self-destructing text. 17:30 Old Field behind Bravo Warehouse. Alone. I looked up. Only the blazing Texas sun, but I knew this wasn't a social invitation. This was a summons to a different kind of battle, not on the parade ground, in the shadows. I once believed that growing up in a military family meant having a foundation of pride wherever I went. But as I got older, I realized that foundation was built for only one person, Daniel. I was nothing more than a shadow trailing behind. Even now, when I close my eyes, I still hear my father's leather shoes pounding down the hallway of our wooden house in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Each step echoed heavy and precise, like the house itself was saluting. To him, everything had to be on time, by the book, military perfect. And within those standards, I was always the mistake. I remember one autumn morning when I was 15. I had just won first place at the state cross-country meet. My feet were bleeding from worn-out shoes, but my chest soared with pride as I clutched the medal. I ran into the kitchen where Mom was stirring chicken soup. I thought she'd hug me, but the sound of boots at the door silenced everything. Dad walked in, uniform crisp though he'd long since retired. I held out my medal. "Dad, I won." He barely glanced before turning to Daniel, then 13, who had just received a letter from West Point. My father's whole face lit up. He lifted the letter like it was a flag. "Now this is honor. This is the future of the Brooks family." Mom set the pot down, silent. I stood frozen, sweat turning cold on my skin. The medal in my hand felt suddenly worthless, like a toy. My 16th birthday is burned into memory. I hoped for a small party, just a cake, something warm. But Dad decided all the budget had to go to Daniel, who had just won a debate contest. "A girl doesn't need much," he said. "Women will marry anyway. Careers aren't meant to shine." That sentence carved into me. I said nothing, but inside I swore. My existence would never be tied to being someone's wife. From childhood, Daniel was trained as a future officer. Dad bought him pellet guns, drilled him in marching, taught him to tie a tie at a perfect 45 degrees, and me, I was given chores, washing cars, cleaning the garage, cooking dinner. When I asked to learn shooting, Dad waved me off. "Don't waste time. Girls lack patience. No tactical vision." Once, I snuck Daniel's pellet gun out to the yard. I lined up empty cans on the fence, took aim, and shot them clean off. Daniel caught me and ran to tell Dad. My punishment? Standing at attention in the yard for 2 hours. Daniel's reward? Another private training session with Dad. Mom rarely opposed him. I think she once had dreams of her own, but they were crushed under Dad's boot heels of discipline. I remember one day she looked at me, eyes glistening, when I held up a newspaper ad for female recruits. She whispered, "Sweetheart, you'll never win against your father. He chose Daniel. He'll never believe in you." But she didn't stop me either. She chose silence, a silence that made me feel more alone than ever. The memory that haunts me most, my grandfather's memorial. He was a World War II veteran. Among the sea of uniforms, Dad wrapped an arm proudly around Daniel, pointing at the monument, lecturing him about family legacy. I stood at the edge, clutching white chrysanthemums. No one noticed. I heard Dad's voice crystal clear. "One day, son, the Brooks name will have another general." My lips bled from biting down. In that moment, I made my vow. If my family will never speak my name, then I'll make the whole world know who I am. At 18, I got an almost full scholarship to college. I thought Dad would be proud. But when I said I wanted to enlist instead, he ripped the letter from my hands, crumpled it, and threw it in the trash. "If you take that path, go alone. Don't ever count on this family." It cut like a knife. I didn't cry. I just bent down, picked up the shredded letter, and packed my bag that night. I sat on the porch under the pale glow of the street lamp. Daniel strolled past in a brand new jacket, smirking. "You'll just be a grunt. I'm the one who will bring honor to the Brooks name." I didn't answer. Some battles can't be fought with words. Years later, standing on the training field as Daniel humiliated me in front of the unit, those memories came back like a storm. Every sneer, every dismissal, every silent birthday, they all fused into armor. It hardened me, but it also forged me. I understood then. I was never chosen to be the pride of this family. But that rejection became my fuel. I no longer dreamed of Dad's approval or Mom's defense. I had only one path, to prove myself with my own hands, my sweat, and my blood. Facing Daniel that day, I didn't just hear a major mocking his sister. I heard every cruel laugh, every women can't do anything, every lonely candleless birthday. And I knew the real battle hadn't even begun. It was only just being lit. The ink on my enlistment contract hadn't even dried when I caught my father's look, disdain mixed with a strange kind of satisfaction. Satisfaction that I would finally fail and that failure would prove him right. Daniel didn't say much, he just smirked. "Go ahead and try, sis. You'll come crawling back with your tail between your legs." I never crawled back, but the price of staying, not everyone could survive it. Fort Jackson, South Carolina basic training. The bus dropped us off at 4 a.m. It was still dark, the lot lit by a few yellow lamps. The doors swung open and a drill sergeant's thunderous voice split the air. "Off the bus, maggots, move, move, move." I jumped down, boots barely hitting the pavement before another voice barked. "Brooks! Oh, the colonel's daughter, huh? Thought I wouldn't know. Military princess. Let's see if you last a week." Right then, I knew. My family's shadow followed me here too. I wasn't Helena Brooks. I was just the colonel's daughter. And everyone was waiting for me to collapse so they could laugh. The first day, we ran 5 miles. I was used to cross country, but this was different. Boots pounding in unison, sergeants screaming, the weight of expectation crushing every step. A guy beside me puffed and sneered. "Hey, Brooks, pick it up. Bet your brother already finished." I clenched my teeth, said nothing. The road stretched endless, but I kept running. By the finish line, my lungs burned like fire, my legs gave out, and I collapsed. But I didn't quit. Week 2, M16 rifle qualification. I knew I had to nail it. If I failed, the whole unit would brand me forever. I gripped the rifle, hands trembling not from fear, but from the dozens of eyes behind me waiting for me to choke. First volley, 5 rounds, 5 bullseyes. The drill sergeant's face stayed blank, just a raised brow. Whispers spread behind me. Someone scoffed. "Yeah, Daddy must have taught her at home." I took a deep breath, fired 5 more, all bullseyes. This time the sergeant gave a curt nod. No praise, but no ridicule either. For me, that was victory. Not every trial went my way. I'll never forget the wall climb, 3 meters high, arms shredded after hours of push-ups and planks. I slipped, crashed down, knees scraped raw. The guys laughed. See, a girl will always be a girl. I wanted to scream back, but words meant nothing here, so I climbed again. Once, twice, 3 times. By the 4th, my nails tore and bled, but I hauled myself over and dropped to the other side. My body shook, drenched in sweat and blood. It hurt like hell. But inside, a quiet pride burned. I hadn't given up. Then came night guard duty. Winter in South Carolina cut to the bone. I stood in the dark, rifle slung, eyes sweeping the emptiness. Minutes dragged like hours. Some nodded off. I didn't. Every time my lids grew heavy, I saw Daniel's smirk. All it would take was one failure and he'd sneer, "Told you so." So I forced my eyes open, letting the wind lash my face raw. 3 months later, I graduated, but the triumph was short-lived. In my first unit assignment, the label followed me again, Daniel's sister. Everywhere I went, I heard, "Oh, you're related to Major Brooks. He's brilliant. And you're just a grunt." Most of the men saw me as dead weight. On a 20-kilometer ruck march with a 65-pound pack, they laughed when I slowed. One guy spat, "Out in the field, you'd get us all killed." I didn't answer. I lowered my head, kept walking, each step like stone. By the finish, my feet were blistered, bleeding, but no one carried me. After that, no one dared say I couldn't handle a pack. I learned fast, in the Army, your name or family means nothing. Only sweat, blood, and results count. But for me, there was always an extra layer of pressure, every achievement measured against Daniel. Once I completed a combat medic drill, saving a teammate in a simulation. The officer praised me. Moments later, someone whispered, "Yeah, he must be the Brooks genes, but her brother's the one with a real future." Words like that stung again and again, but they hardened me too. If I wanted respect, I'd have to work twice, 3 times as hard. I found solace in a few comrades, people who also knew what it was like to be underestimated. McKay, a Texan with a dark tan and a sharp joke for every hardship. Ramirez, a tiny Mexican-American woman who shot straighter than anyone I'd ever seen. They didn't care who I was related to. They only cared that I never quit. One night after drills, Ramirez sat with me. She said, "You know, Helena, nobody remembers who you are here. They only remember what you do. So keep doing this." I didn't answer, but a weight lifted inside me. My first real deployment seared into me. We were sent to the Middle East, a medical support mission. The heat was savage, dust choking our lungs. We had barely set up the aid station when the explosion hit, a truck rigged with a bomb. I sprinted in, Ramirez at my side, dragging wounded soldiers from the flames. Blood everywhere, screams louder than gunfire. My hands shook, but my training carried me. Pressure dressings, morphine, Roman 4. That night I couldn't sleep. The eyes of a young soldier pleading, "Don't let me die," burned into me. When we returned to base, the headlines only read, "Major Daniel Brooks led the operation." The hands that pulled men from fire, not a word. I gripped the paper so hard it tore. But I also knew truth rarely matches the headline. The Army years stripped me bare. They took my youth, my innocence, the simple dream of a peaceful family. But they gave me armor, skin of steel, will unbreakable. I learned to stand tall even with blood seeping into my boots. I learned to stay silent under ridicule because real victory doesn't need words. And inside me, the fury toward Daniel never cooled. Every article praising him, every call from Dad bragging about him, I swore harder, I will prove I'm more than a shadow. Yet beneath the rage, there was sorrow. Once he was just my little brother. We played in the yard, shared our first candy bar. Now he was the reason I lived under a cloud of doubt, a shadow I could never escape. One late night after another punishing march, I sat alone under the stars. "How much longer can I last?" I whispered. The cold wind answered back, and then my own voice inside. "As long as it takes, just don't fall." That became my creed, and that's why, no matter how long they looked down on me, I endured. Endured so that one day, when the truth came out, no one would ever dare call me a grunt again. August in Fort Hood, Texas, wasn't just hot, it was an assault. Red dust rose from the ground like an oven's breath, clinging to our tongues. We stood in formation, rifles slung across our chests, sweat running down beneath our camo, but no one dared move. Today was the mandatory marksmanship test. For most, just routine. For me, Sergeant Helena Brooks, 34, it was destiny's chessboard. Because Daniel was there. My younger brother, Major Daniel Brooks, 32, stood among the senior officers. He had the stance our father drilled into him, shoulders squared, chin slightly lifted, one hand casually in his pocket like he owned the world. Young lieutenants clustered around him, laughing at every word. The moment I stepped into formation, his voice rang out, loud enough for everyone. "Well, well, Sergeant Brooks joined in. I only hope she won't embarrass the unit today." Laughter rippled through the younger soldiers. I kept my eyes forward, jaw locked. In my head, my father's voice echoed, "You'll only ever be a grunt, don't dream." The drill sergeant barked commands. One by one, names were called. Shots cracked downrange, paper targets shuddering at 300 meters. The air thickened with gunpowder, sweat, and tension. When my name came, Daniel chimed in like a show host. "Ah, Brooks is up. How about we make this interesting?" A lieutenant grinned. "A bet, I'm in. What's on the table, Major?" Daniel's smirk gleamed. If she can't land 3 shots in the bullseye, she'll apologize publicly to the unit for dragging the Brooks name through the mud. But if she does, he shrugged, casual, I'll buy the whole unit beer. Cheers erupted. McKay muttered near me, Don't let him win this, Helena. I gave no nod, no shake. I just stepped to the firing lane. My hands moved on the M4 with muscle memory. Mag out, mag in. Bolt racked, safety off. Inside, my heart pounded. Dozens of eyes bored into me, hungry to see the major's sister stumble. I drew a deep breath. In that moment, the range dissolved. It was just me, the rifle, and the target. I remembered Father scoffing. Girls don't have patience for shooting. I remembered Daniel sneering when I was punished for sneaking the BB gun. I remembered every dismissive laugh across the years, all of it compressed into my finger on the trigger. 1 shot, 2, 3, 4, 5. The cracks thundered, echoing off the hot field. The target reeled in. On the paper, 5 holes fused into one cluster dead center. Silence, no laughter, only the Texas wind slicing across the range. The drill sergeant strode over, voice booming. Confirmed, 5 bullseyes. The soldiers erupted, whistles, cheers, applause. McKay shouted, That's our beer. Ramirez nudged me with a grin. Damn fine shooting, Brooks. Daniel froze, his smile faltering for half a heartbeat before he forced it back. Not bad. Guess you remembered a little training. His voice was light, but his eyes burned. I removed my headset, set the rifle down, and walked away without a word. Silence was my sharpest weapon. That afternoon in the armory, I cleaned rifles under the dull yellow light. Metal racks lined up neat as soldiers. The scrape of the door startled me. Daniel stepped in. His voice was low, steady. Helena, you think pulling that stunt will make anyone remember you? I didn't look up. I don't need them to remember. I need results. He moved closer, shadow stretching across the floor. Results? What life will you save with holes in paper? I'm the officer. I decide who lives, who dies. You'll always be dirt-bound, just a sergeant. I set the rifle on the rack, turned to him, eyes steady. If you need to remind yourself you matter, go ahead. But out there, our soldiers know who drags them out of the fire, and it isn't you. For a moment, his smile dropped. His eyes went ice-cold, a flicker of threat glinting. Then he tapped the metal door with one finger. Careful, Helena, not everyone likes it when you shine too bright. The door slammed shut, leaving the stink of gun oil and resentment hanging heavy. Rumors spread fast. Sergeant Brooks hit 5 bullseyes. The major got shown up. The whispers followed me through the halls. Some greeted me with new eyes, no longer dismissive. Daniel, though, grew quieter, tighter, more irritable. One evening, McKay and Ramirez dragged me to the mess hall. Soldiers gathered, buzzing about the bet. Beer flowed, Daniel had promised, and he couldn't back down. I sat sipping slow, listening to the laughter, and for the first time felt a strange warmth. I wasn't just Daniel's sister. I was Helena, the one who proved herself. That night, I didn't go back to my quarters right away. I returned to the range, alone under buzzing floodlights. I fired round after round into the dark. Each shot a heartbeat, each shot a declaration. When the echoes died into silence, I whispered to the empty field. I've stayed silent too long. From now on, Helena Brooks won't be a shadow. A helicopter roared overhead, blades slicing the night. I looked up, blood surging through my veins. I knew Daniel wouldn't let this slide. He now saw me as a threat, and when someone like him sees a threat, he eliminates it. But I also knew something else. This time I was ready. Every base has its own smell. Fort Hood smelled like red dust, gun oil, and rusting Humvees. But that morning I caught something else, the smell of unease. I was assigned with Ramirez and McKay to inventory the armory. A simple job, count, record, cross-check. For most soldiers, routine. But I'd always been meticulous. And sometimes the smallest details uncover the biggest secrets. The Fort Hood Armory was a concrete block with thick steel doors layered in seals. Inside, fluorescent lights glared down on rows of metal racks. M4s, M16s, M249s stood in line like mute soldiers. Ammo crates stacked high, labels plastered thick. Ramirez read from the ledger while McKay and I counted. M4 rifles, 120, Ramirez called. I ran my hand along the row, counting. Only 115. McKay frowned. Maybe some are signed out. No requisitions, I muttered. I checked the log. We moved on. 5. 56mm rounds, nearly 200 missing. Smoke grenades, short by 12. Small numbers, but enough to make my spine prickle. Missing gear wasn't unheard of. Sloppy paperwork, someone forgetting to sign. But these numbers weren't random. Spread evenly, just small enough to slip by. To anyone careless, invisible. To anyone watching closely, a pattern. Every week, weapons disappearing bit by bit. I jotted everything in my private notebook, something I'd done since my first deployment. On the battlefield, I'd learned the tiniest details can save lives or get you killed. When we reported it, the armory officer just shrugged. Paperwork mix-up, don't lose sleep. I studied his face, deep lines, dark circles. Maybe he truly didn't notice, or maybe he chose not to. Outside, McKay clapped my shoulder. Don't make it a headache, happens everywhere. I growled back, no, McKay, this isn't sloppy math, someone's stealing weapons. Ramirez shot me a sharp look. And who do you think has the authority to cover that up? Her words stuck in my head all day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I flipped open my notebook, scribbled the numbers, 5 rifles, 200 rounds, 12 grenades. Small, but enough for a gang to wreak havoc. I remembered a news story months back. A crew in town robbed a bank using military-grade arms. Everyone blamed the black market. But I knew, weapons don't sprout from thin air. The question gnawed at me. Who's opening the armory door from the inside? The next day, I returned to the armory, pretending to check the logs again. My eyes froze on the signature. Neat, slanted handwriting. Familiar, I'd seen it my whole life. Daniel. His name appeared on at least 3 withdrawal forms, each marked after-hours training. Yet no such training had ever taken place. I held the paper, hands trembling. Part of me wanted to believe it was a mistake, but mistakes don't repeat themselves this neatly. I stepped outside into the blazing Texas sun, the slip damp in my sweaty palm. I wanted to tear it apart, but I couldn't. This was evidence, and it led straight to my brother. Later in the mess hall, soldiers buzzed about the shooting bet from last week. McKay slid a tray toward me. Brooks, you look like you swallowed a rock. I glanced at him, then at Ramirez. I wanted to tell them, but without hard proof, it'd turn on me. Daniel was an officer, a star. I was just a sergeant. Ramirez narrowed her eyes. Something's up. I forced a weak smile. Just tired. But that night, I stayed awake. I decided to follow him. A week later, Daniel left base late. I tailed him, headlights off, keeping distance. His charcoal SUV turned down a dirt road behind the barracks. He stopped at an abandoned warehouse. A civilian truck waited. I watched as he and a few men carried wooden crates into the truck. I didn't need the labels, I knew those crates. Weapons. My heart slammed. Cold sweat drenched my back. My hands gripped the wheel, itching to confront him, to scream. But if I blew it now, I'd lose everything. I needed proof. Through the windshield, I snapped photos. Grainy, but enough to show his face. When the truck rolled away, I sat frozen. Back in my room, I loaded the photos onto my laptop. Blurry but unmistakable. Daniel in uniform hauling crates out of the warehouse. I braced my hands on the desk, chest heavy as stone. My suspicions were now reality. My brother, the star major, the family's pride, was running weapons out of the army. The next morning, Daniel crossed my path in the corridor. He smiled, voice casual. "Sleep well, Helena, you look tired." His eyes lingered on me a beat too long, like he already knew. I forced a thin smile. Stayed up cleaning rifles. He nodded, leaned close, whispered, "In the army, sometimes it's best not to look too closely. Stare too hard, you'll lose sleep." I froze. He walked away, the scent of expensive cologne trailing with the smell of gun oil. In that instant, one thought cut sharp. He knows I know. That night, I returned to the range, firing shot after shot into the dark. Each crack echoed his words, "Don't look too closely." But I knew I had no choice. The evidence I had wasn't enough to take him down, but it was enough to make me a threat. And from that moment on, I understood this war between us was no longer family business. It was survival. When I saw Daniel moving weapons out of the base, I wasn't surprised. Shocked, yes. Hurt, yes. But surprised, no. Deep down, I had always known my brother carried a fracture inside him since long ago. That fracture was born in our childhood home in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And my father, the man I both respected and resented, fed it with blind favoritism. The first memory burned into me. I was 10, Daniel was 8. My piggy bank had been broken into, bills gone. I knew instantly it was him. He always had that sly look, always turned up with candy no one knew where he got. I stormed into his room, tore through his drawer, and found my money inside a shoebox. I held it up, shouting, "Dad, Daniel stole from me." Father walked in, face stiff as during an inspection. Daniel stood there, arms folded, eyes wide in fake innocence. "Why accuse your brother?" Dad asked. I showed the evidence. "My money's right here, in his drawer." Daniel blinked, voice trembling just enough. I was borrowing it. I wanted to buy her a birthday present." My throat closed. Father looked at me, then at him, and pronounced, "Helena, don't be selfish. He just wanted to make you happy. Learn to trust your brother." That night I was punished to kneel on the porch for lying to divide the family. Daniel ate cake inside. I remember his eyes peeking through the window, smirking in the dark. Another time. I was 13, he 11. At military prep school, Daniel was caught cheating on a test. The teacher called Dad. But instead of punishing him, Dad patted his shoulder and said, "In war, survival matters more than rules. The boy's just improvising." Daniel walked free. The teacher got scolded for lack of vision. Sitting outside that door, I understood. From then on, Daniel would never respect rules. He believed in one thing: he was untouchable. The most searing memory: I was 16, he 14. I had just qualified for the inter-school track meet. The night before, my running shoes vanished. After tearing the house apart, I found them in the backyard trash, slashed to ribbons. I knew who did it. I stormed into his room, shredded shoes in hand. "You did this, didn't you?" He sat on his bed, headphones on, calm as stone. "Got proof." I screamed, "Dad, he ruined my shoes." Dad rushed in. Daniel's eyes welled up on cue. "I didn't do anything, must have been the dog." Dad turned on me. "Helena, stop making baseless accusations. Focus on your race." I wanted to cry, to scream, to expose him. But what was the point? The next day I ran in borrowed shoes, a size too big. I placed third. On the sidelines, Daniel clapped and laughed. Years later in the army, every time he called me grunt, I remembered Dad scolding me for accusing him of theft. When I saw his signature on fake withdrawal slips, I recalled those slashed shoes in the trash. When he whispered, "Some people don't like you standing out," I remembered his smirk through the window as I knelt outside in the dark. Daniel hadn't changed, he just grew more sophisticated. I also remember my mother. She stood up for me once, only once, but it carved deep. I was 17, he 15. He'd been caught smoking behind school. I saw it with my own eyes. When Dad came, Daniel tried to lie his way out. I spoke up. "Dad, I saw him smoke." Dad's face flared with anger. "Helena, another lie." My heart hammered. But then Mom spoke. I smelled smoke on Daniel's jacket, too. The room froze, Daniel gaped. Dad stared at Mom. Finally, he exhaled. "Enough, don't do it again." That night, Mom sat beside me, held my hand. "Be strong, one day people will see the truth." But she never defended me again. Silence reclaimed her fear or exhaustion. Still, I never forgot. When the present came crashing down, missing weapons, forged signatures, the warehouse, Daniel with strangers, I knew all of it had roots in those years. Daniel had been taught he'd never face consequences. That someone would always shield him. That power wasn't about truth, but about controlling the story. And he believed it completely. That night after tailing him, I dreamed a nightmare that wasn't really a dream. I was 15 again in our old house, screaming. Daniel stole my money. Daniel slashed my shoes. Daniel lied. But no sound came out. Dad shook his head, wrapped Daniel in an embrace. And Daniel turned, smiling cold, a pistol in his hand instead of candy. I woke drenched in sweat, heart racing. It wasn't fantasy, it was memory magnified into nightmare. In the army, they say, training doesn't change a soldier's nature, it only reveals it. For Daniel, the army didn't mold him, it armed him. That same spoiled impunity, now with rank, authority, and weapons. Looking back, the truth was glaring. Daniel wasn't just arrogant. He was a danger. And I, the only one in the family who ever truly saw him, was once again the one who had to face him. The next day I watched him at the base. Same confident stance, same polite smile, same crowd of young officers orbiting him. No one saw what I saw. No one remembered the thefts, the lies, the sabotage, only me. And I knew if I did nothing, he'd continue. More weapons, more betrayal, worse crimes. This time there was no father to protect him. But he had rank, power, allies, and I had only the truth. I closed my notebook, tucked it into my chest pocket. Every missing rifle, every forged signature, every blurred photo, they were all pieces of a puzzle. I didn't know what the full picture would be, but I knew it would expose Daniel for who he really was. And this time he wouldn't be smiling. Fort Hood woke glittering that morning. The military band had been rehearsing since dawn, drums echoing across the base. White chairs lined under a canopy draped with American flags. Soldiers pressed their uniforms, boots shining, shoulders stiff. No one dared drift. The press, generals, and VIPs were all here today. They had come for one moment, Major Daniel Brooks receiving the Medal of Excellence. I stood in formation, eyes locked forward, stomach twisting. On stage, the podium gleamed, microphones clipped, fresh flowers on either side. In the front row sat my father, dress uniform starched, his posture straight as if still on duty. His eyes shone with pride. Beside him, my mother sat rigid, lips pressed tight, her hands clenched in her lap. It was perfect. Perfect to the point of falsehood. Because I knew the truth. The man about to be celebrated was smuggling weapons, betraying us all. If I stayed silent, within hours he'd be untouchable. The folder inside my jacket felt like lead, forged withdrawal slips signed by Daniel, photos of him carrying crates at midnight, a recording of his voice. The shipment leaves Fort Hood before dawn. Not just paper, this was the blade to slice through his mask. My heart pounded. My hands trembled. A voice whispered inside, if you speak, they'll call you a traitor. Who will believe a sergeant over a major? Then I remembered my mother's one moment of courage. Be strong. One day people will see the truth. That night's words lit a fire. I clenched the folder. That day was today. The band struck up a march. Daniel stepped out, uniform crisp, chest puffed, moving like the stage had been built for him. Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. The commanding general lifted the mic, voice ringing. Major Brooks, today we honor you for your dedication to weapons security and outstanding leadership in training. Every word, weapons security, stabbed me. Daniel smiled, nodding, the very picture of military honor. I couldn't let him stand there. As the general raised the medal, I shot to my feet. Chairs clattered. Heads turned. My voice rang out, cutting through the music. Sir, I object. The hall froze, the general's brow furrowed. Who spoke? I stepped forward, raising the folder high. Sergeant Helena Brooks. I have proof that Major Daniel Brooks is corrupt, smuggling weapons out of this base. The hall erupted. Cameras whipped toward me. Hundreds of eyes burned. Daniel stalled for half a second, then forced a strained smile. General, my sister, she's under stress, clearly unstable. Please don't take her seriously. My father shot up, face flushed. Helena, stop this madness, you shame the family. My mother trembled, clutching her purse, eyes shut tight. I drew a deep breath, voice steady as steel. These are withdrawal slips signed by Major Brooks on dates with no training scheduled. These are photos of him and accomplices moving crates. And this, I tapped my phone, the recording blasting through the loudspeakers. The shipment leaves Fort Hood before dawn. Daniel's voice, clear, inescapable, the crowd roared. The general seized the folder, flipping fast, his eyes narrowing like blades. He turned. Major, explain this. Daniel's face drained. He erupted. It's fake. She made it all up. She's jealous. She's hated me since we were kids. You all know it. I locked eyes with him, my voice cut low and sharp. I didn't make this up, Daniel. You built your whole life on lies, and today they fall. The general signaled. Military police strode forward. Daniel panicked, thrashing. I'm a major. You can't touch me. He turned desperately. Dad, say something. My father staggered, lips parted, but no words came. He looked at his son, then at me, tears brimming. A lifetime of favoritism shattered before him. My mother opened her eyes, locking onto mine. Her lips quivered, but she didn't speak. In her gaze, I read, finally, the truth is spoken. The handcuffs snapped shut on Daniel's wrists. The metallic clack echoed through the hall. Cameras flashed wildly. Daniel screamed, voice hoarse. You'll regret this, Helena. You have no idea what you've done. I stood tall, chest firm, eyes unflinching. I know exactly what I've done. I saved my soldiers from a traitor. As he was dragged away, silence blanketed the base. The general set the folder on the podium, voice iron hard. We will launch a full investigation. But today, let this be remembered. Honor in the army does not lie in rank. It lies in truth. And truth has just been brought to light by a sergeant. His eyes flicked to me. I saluted, sharp and unwavering. After the ceremony, I sat alone in my room, afternoon light bleeding through the blinds. The band, the shouting, the handcuffs all replayed in my head. I didn't feel triumph. I felt hollow. My family was shattered forever. My father would never forgive me. Daniel would hate me until his last breath. Then came a knock. Ramirez entered, her gaze steady. Helena, today you did what most of us never could, and you didn't do it for yourself, you did it for all of us. McKay poked his head in, forcing a grin. And thanks to you, our beer won't end up funding the black market. A laugh burst from me, strangled by tears. For the first time, I felt I wasn't a shadow anymore. I was Helena Brooks, and though the price was steep, I had chosen truth. Outside, the American flag rippled in the dusk wind. I whispered to it. Honor isn't in medals. It's in standing tall, even if it means standing against your own blood. Night fell over Fort Hood like a heavy curtain. From my barracks window, I looked out at the parade ground, where just that morning flags had blazed and the band had thundered. Now only the wind moved, lifting dust under the weak glow of yellow lamps. No cheers, no applause, just silence pressing down on my chest. News spread faster than Texas wind. Within hours of the ceremony, everyone on base knew. Major Daniel Brooks had been arrested by the MPs on stage. Young soldiers whispered in the mess hall. Junior officers avoided speaking of it, but their eyes betrayed shock, confusion, even a strange relief, like they had witnessed a legend collapse and realized any of them could be unmasked too. I sat frozen on my bed, still in uniform. The smell of gunpowder from yesterday's range clung to my collar. The folder was gone, the general had taken it as evidence, but the weight lingered, pressing on my heart. A knock came. McKay peeked in, a soda can in hand. You all right? I pressed my lips tight. Fine. He stepped inside, set the can down. Brooks, the whole barracks is buzzing. For the first time, they're not calling you the Major's sister. They're calling you the one who dared to speak the truth. I bowed my head, fists tight. That title doesn't feel good either. McKay sighed, pat my shoulder. Truth never feels good, but someone's gotta carry it. He left, the can rolling with a hollow clink on the desk. I sat there, staring at the floor, my mind blank. Near midnight, my mother came. She asked permission to enter, eyes avoiding mine. I stood at attention by reflex, unsure if I should salute or turn away. "Helena," she whispered, "I'm sorry." I froze. Never in my life had I heard those words from her. "I've been silent too long," she said. "I knew Daniel had problems since he was a boy, but your father, he never listened, and I didn't have the courage to fight him. Today you did what I never could. Her voice cracked. "I'm proud of you." My eyes stung. I wanted to run to her to hold her, but my legs wouldn't move. Between us stood years of silence, yet tonight one brick in that wall finally fell. She left, and I was alone again. The next morning, the general summoned me. He sat behind his desk, gaze sharp but not as cold as at the ceremony. He handed me a folder. "We'll launch a full investigation. The evidence you provided is a start, but there's more to uncover. Brooks," his eyes cut into me, "you realize what you did could end your army career." I nodded. "I know, but I couldn't stay silent." He inclined his head. "That's why I believe you, and that's why this army needs people like you." I snapped a salute. Leaving the office, my steps felt steadier even as the weight still pressed deep. The press exploded. Headlines screamed. "Major arrested during medal ceremony. Rising star officer linked to arms smuggling." Some mentioned me. Briefly, sources say a sergeant raised the alarm. No name, and I didn't need one. A week later, I was allowed to visit the holding cell. I didn't know why I wanted to. Maybe I needed to look him in the eye one more time. Daniel sat behind bars, uniform stripped, only gray prison clothes, but his eyes hadn't changed. Sharp, arrogant, mocking. "Here to savor your victory," he sneered. "Congrats, you made the Brooks name famous, just not the way you dreamed." I held his gaze. "I didn't win, Daniel, I just told the truth." He arched a brow, a glint of menace in his eyes. "Truth only exists if people believe it. You think they'll keep believing a sergeant forever? I have friends. I have allies. The game's not over." I stood tall. "Maybe, but for the first time in your life, you're not untouchable." I turned and walked out, leaving his cold laugh echoing in the dark. Outside, the Texas wind lashed hot against my face. But inside, I felt cool. I wasn't safe. He could still strike back. But I knew this. I had stopped him once, and I would again if I had to. That weekend, I sat with Ramirez and McKay on the training field. We stayed quiet a long time, only the crickets filling the night. Then Ramirez said softly, "Helena, the hardest thing isn't hitting the target. It's daring to shoot at the truth." I smiled faintly, eyes lifting to the stars, shining silent as witnesses. "I don't know what the future holds," I said. "But I know one thing, I will never bow my head again." Before bed, I paused at the window. The American flag rippled in the night wind, whispering like a breath. I whispered back, "Honor isn't a medal. Honor is standing tall, even if it means standing against your own blood. And if that's the price, I'll pay it." I drew the curtain, turned off the light. The Texas night fell heavy and still. In the darkness, I saw it clearer than ever. I was no longer a shadow. I was Helena Brooks. I was the truth.